Have you ever noticed that certain memories refuse to disappear? Years can pass. Entire chapters of life can come and go. Yet one moment remains. A conversation, a mistake, a missed opportunity, a decision you wish you had made differently. And somehow, your mind continues returning to it, again and again and again. Sometimes it happens without warning. A familiar song, a place, a photograph, a random thought, and suddenly you're transported back in time, reliving an experience that no longer exists. Most people assume this happens because they haven't moved on, because they're weak, because they're stuck. But what if none of those explanations are true? What if your mind is not replaying the past to punish you? What if it's replaying the past because it's trying to protect you? The human brain is a prediction machine. Its primary job is not happiness. Its primary job is survival. And one of the ways it tries to protect you is by studying previous experiences, searching for lessons, searching for patterns, searching for information that might help you avoid future pain. This process is incredibly useful. Without it, we would repeat the same mistakes endlessly. But sometimes, something unusual happens. The brain becomes convinced that there is still something important hidden inside a memory, something unresolved, something unfinished, something that still requires attention. And because of that belief, the memory continues returning. Not because this event is still happening, but because the brain has not finished searching. The strange thing is that many of the memories we revisit most often share something in common. They involve emotion, regret, embarrassment, loss, rejection, heartbreak, moments that made us question ourselves, moments that changed how we see the world. The stronger the emotional charge, the stronger the memory becomes. And the stronger the memory becomes, the more attention the mind gives it. A cycle begins. Attention strengthens memory. Memory captures attention. And over time, the past starts feeling more alive than the present. But here's the question that changes everything. What exactly is the mind still looking for? And why does it keep searching long after the event is over? To answer that, we need to understand what the brain is actually trying to accomplish when it replays the past. If the past is already over, why does the mind keep returning to it? At first glance, it doesn't make much sense. The event is gone. The moment has passed. Nothing can be changed. And yet the brain continues revisiting it as though something important still depends on it. To understand why, we need to look at how memory actually works. Most people imagine memory as a storage system, a mental archive where experiences are recorded and preserved. But memory is far more active than that. Memory is not designed simply to remember the past. It is designed to prepare you for the future. Every experience you have ever lived becomes information. Information the brain can use to make predictions, to recognize danger, to identify opportunities, to avoid pain, and increase the chances of survival. This is one reason emotionally intense experiences are often remembered so vividly. The brain treats strong emotions as important signals. Something significant happened, something worth remembering, something that might matter again. Imagine touching a hot stove as a child. The experience creates a powerful memory. Years later, you still remember it. Not because your brain enjoys replaying pain, but because the memory protects you. It teaches, it warns, it prepares. In many situations, this system works beautifully. But emotional experiences are often more complicated because emotional pain rarely comes with simple answers. A broken relationship, a betrayal, a missed opportunity, a painful mistake. Unlike touching a hot stove, these experiences don't always provide a clear lesson. The brain continues searching, looking for understanding, looking for meaning, looking for certainty. And every time it returns to the memory, it asks the same question. What am I missing? What haven't I understood yet? What could I have done differently? This process can continue for months, sometimes years. Not because the event is unfinished, but because the brain believes the lesson is unfinished. This is why some memories feel almost impossible to release. The mind is still trying to solve them, still trying to extract meaning from them, still trying to transform pain into knowledge. And yet there is a hidden problem. Some experiences do not contain an answer that will finally satisfy the mind. Some experiences are simply part of being human. Loss, rejection, disappointment, regret. No amount of analysis can erase them. No amount of replaying can change what happened. And this is where many people become trapped, because they continue searching for a level of certainty that the memory can never provide. The mind keeps returning, not because it has found the answer, but because it hasn't accepted that some answers may never arrive. And once we understand that, a deeper question begins to emerge. What if the real reason we can't let go isn't the memory itself? What if it's something else entirely? There's a reason certain memories feel impossible to release. A reason some experiences continue living inside the mind long after they have ended. And surprisingly, that reason is often not the memory itself. It is what the memory represents. Many people believe they are trapped by the past, but in reality, they are often trapped by something else. The search for closure. The search for the explanation that will finally make everything make sense. The conversation that was never finished. The apology that never came. The opportunity that disappeared. The relationship that ended without answers. The dream that never became reality. Part of the mind remains convinced that if it can just understand what happened, it will finally be able to move on. And so the search continues. The memory returns. The analysis begins. The questions appear. Why did it happen? What did I miss? What should I have done differently? What if I had made another choice? At first, these questions seem reasonable, but over time, something changes. The questions stop creating clarity and begin creating suffering, because the mind becomes trapped in a reality that no longer exists, a reality that cannot be edited, cannot be corrected, cannot be rewritten. Yet the brain continues behaving as though another answer is still waiting to be discovered. This is one of the most difficult truths about emotional healing. Closure is not always something we find. Sometimes closure is something we create, not by discovering a perfect explanation, but by accepting that a perfect explanation may never exist. Think about how often the mind says, "I'll be okay once I understand." But what if understanding is not the missing piece? What if acceptance is? Because many of the events that shape our lives are not logical. People leave. Mistakes happen. Opportunities disappear. Life changes direction without warning. And sometimes there is no satisfying answer, no final explanation, no missing puzzle piece waiting to be found. Only the reality of what happened. And the choice of how we move forward. This is why the search for closure can become so exhausting. The mind keeps asking questions that reality cannot answer. And every unanswered question strengthens the illusion that there's still unfinished business. But perhaps the real unfinished business is not the memory. Perhaps it is our refusal to stop negotiating with the past. And if that's true, then we need to explore something even deeper. Because over time, some memories stop being experiences we remember and become part of who we believe we are. There is something even more powerful than memory, the meaning we attach to it. Because memories are not just records of what happened, they are stories. Stories we tell ourselves about who we are. And over time, some of those stories become so familiar that we stop questioning them. A painful rejection becomes, I am not worthy of love. A failed opportunity becomes, I always ruin things. A mistake becomes, I am a failure. Notice what happened. The memory is no longer simply an event. It has become an identity. Something that happened is transformed into something you believe you are. And this is where the past gains its greatest power, not when it hurts us, but when it defines us. Because once a memory becomes part of your identity, the mind begins collecting evidence to support it. If you believe you are not good enough, the brain notices every mistake, every criticism, every rejection, and quietly ignores the moments that contradict the story. This is one of the brain's most fascinating tendencies. It searches for consistency. It wants your experiences to match your beliefs, even when those beliefs are painful. As a result, old memories become anchors, holding us in place. Not because they are stronger than us, but because we continue using them to explain who we are. Think about how often people describe themselves through their wounds. The person who was abandoned, the person who failed, the person who was betrayed, the person who lost their chance. Over time, the memory becomes more than a memory. It becomes a lens, a filter through which every new experience is interpreted. And yet there is a problem. The past can explain you without defining you. It can teach you without becoming you. It can influence you without controlling you. But many people never discover this distinction. They spend years carrying identities that were created during moments of pain. Identities that no longer reflect who they are, only who they once were. The truth is that every human being is larger than their worst moment, larger than their greatest mistake, larger than their deepest regret. A memory may describe part of your story, but it is not the entire story. And the moment you begin to see that, something remarkable happens. The past starts losing its grip, not because the memory disappears, but because you no longer confuse the memory with yourself. You stop asking, why did this happen to me? And begin asking, what can this experience teach me now? That shift changes everything, because healing does not require erasing the past. It requires changing your relationship with it. And once that relationship changes, a new possibility begins to emerge. The possibility of finally letting go. Before we finish, I'd like you to try a simple exercise. Not to erase the past, not to forget what happened, but to change the way you carry it. For a moment, bring to mind a memory that continues returning. A memory you've replayed countless times. A mistake, a loss, a disappointment, a moment you wish had unfolded differently. Now ask yourself a question. What is this memory trying to give me? Not what is it trying to take from me? What is it trying to give me? Perhaps a lesson, perhaps wisdom, perhaps understanding, perhaps strength. Take a moment and allow an answer to emerge. You may be surprised by what you discover, because many of the memories we cling to are not asking to be relived. They are asking to be understood. And once the lesson is learned, something extraordinary becomes possible. The pain no longer needs to carry the same weight. This does not mean the memory disappears. It does not mean the experience suddenly becomes pleasant. It simply means that its purpose has changed. The memory stops being a prison and becomes a teacher. For many people, letting go sounds like forgetting, but they are not the same thing. Forgetting removes the memory. Letting go removes the suffering attached to it. The event remains, but the emotional struggle begins to soften, and perhaps this is one of the greatest misunderstandings about healing. Healing is not deleting the past. Healing is learning how to live without constantly negotiating with it, without replaying it, without arguing with it, without demanding that it become different from what it was. Because no matter how many times the mind revisits yesterday, yesterday will never change. The only thing that can change is your relationship with it. And that relationship begins in the present moment, right here, right now. Not years ago, not inside the memory, but here, where life is still unfolding, where new experiences are still possible, where new stories can still be written. The truth is that every human being carries memories, some beautiful, some painful, some unforgettable. That is part of being alive. But memories were never meant to become permanent homes. They were meant to become chapters, important chapters, meaningful chapters, but chapters nonetheless, because your story is still being written, and no single chapter has the authority to define the entire book. Not your mistakes, not your regrets, not your losses, not even your deepest wounds. You are larger than all of them. Perhaps the past continues calling your name because it wants to be acknowledged, not worshipped, not feared, not relived, simply acknowledged. And once it has been acknowledged, perhaps it can finally rest. Perhaps you can finally rest. Because peace doesn't come from changing the past. Peace comes from releasing the belief that the past still controls the present. And maybe that is what letting go truly means. Not forgetting what happened, but remembering that your life is bigger than what happened. The past may be part of your story, but it is not your destiny. And perhaps the moment you stop living inside old memories is the moment you finally begin living inside your life.